I was cheated out of my own marriage, publicly humiliated at a wedding, and financially betrayed, but I rebuilt my life, exposed the lies, and found real love in the aftermath of it all. Jake Mitchell stood in front of the mirror, tying his navy tie with the precision of a man who knew today mattered. His sister-in-law's wedding was more than a family event. It was Sophia's stage, and he was determined to play his part. The Langston estate in the Hamptons loomed in his mind, a world of wealth and exclusivity he'd never quite fit into. But for Sophia, his glamorous, image-obsessed wife, he'd try. He adjusted his tailored navy suit, the one Sophia had approved after rejecting 3 others. His polished black shoes gleamed under the morning light streaming through their Manhattan apartment window. Jake wasn't vain, but he wanted to look the part. Loyal husband, supportive brother-in-law, a man who belonged at Madison Langston's high society wedding. He grabbed his keys, checked his phone for Sophia's last text, left early to help Madison, meet you there, and headed out. The drive to the Hamptons was quiet, the kind of quiet that let doubts creep in. Jake pushed them aside. Sophia had been distant lately, consumed by wedding plans and her carefully curated Instagram grid. He told himself it was temporary. Today, he'd stand by her side, smile for the photos, and maybe steal a moment to remind her they were still a team. The Langston estate came into view, a sprawling mansion surrounded by manicured lawns and white tents. Luxury cars lined the driveway, Bentleys, Teslas, a Rolls-Royce. Jake parked his modest Audi, feeling the familiar pang of being out of place. He straightened his tie, grabbed the gift bag with the crystal vase Sophia had insisted on, and walked toward the entrance. The security guard, a burly man in a black suit, held up a hand. Name? Jake Mitchell, he said, offering a polite smile. The guard scanned a tablet, his brow furrowing. You're not on the list. Jake blinked. There must be a mistake. I'm Sophia Langston's husband, Madison's brother-in-law. The guard tapped the screen again, then shook his head. No Mitchell. No +1 for Sophia Langston either. That's impossible, Jake said, his voice tightening. Can you check again? The guard's expression hardened. I've checked. You're not on here. A couple behind Jake, dressed in designer outfits, whispered to each other. He felt their eyes on him, the heat of embarrassment creeping up his neck. Look, my wife's already inside. Can you just call her? Sophia Langston. The guard sighed, speaking into his earpiece. Need confirmation on a Jake Mitchell. Claims he's with Sophia Langston. Jake's stomach churned. Claims? He was her husband of 5 years. He glanced toward the venue, catching a glimpse of Sophia in the distance. She stood under a floral arch laughing with her mother, Heather, both of them radiant in their curated elegance. She didn't look like a woman wondering where her husband was. The guard listened to his earpiece, then turned to Jake. No response. Sorry, sir, you'll have to step aside. Step aside. Jake's voice rose, drawing more attention. A few guests pulled out their phones, filming discreetly. This is my sister-in-law's wedding. I'm not some gatecrasher. Sir, I don't make the list, the guard said, crossing his arms. You need to leave. Jake's mind raced. Sophia had left early, hadn't she? She'd been vague about the details, but that wasn't unusual. She thrived in the chaos of her family's world, Heather's demands, Madison's drama, the constant need to project perfection. He'd assumed she'd handle his inclusion, she always did. Or did she? He looked again at Sophia, now posing for a photographer. She hadn't glanced his way once. Heather, ever the matriarch, stood beside her, directing the scene like a stage manager. Jake's hope that today would be different, that he'd feel like part of their world, crumbled. Fine, he muttered, turning back to the guard. I'll call her myself. He dialed Sophia's number. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. Her cheery recorded voice, "Hey, it's Sophia, leave a message," felt like a slap. He tried again, same result. By now, the whispers around him had grown louder. A woman in a sequin dress smirked, typing furiously on her phone. Jake caught a glimpse of her screen, a video of him arguing with the guard, already uploaded to Instagram with the caption, "When even your wife forgets you." His face burned. He shoved his phone into his pocket, grabbed the gift bag, and walked back to his car. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. Not just the embarrassment, but the realization that something was deeply wrong. Sophia hadn't just forgotten to put him on the list. She hadn't wanted him there. The drive home was a blur. Jake's mind replayed every detail, the guard's dismissal, the guests' stares, Sophia's laughter in the distance. He thought about their marriage, the slow erosion he'd tried to ignore, the way she'd brush off his questions about her late nights networking, the way she'd roll her eyes when he suggested a quiet weekend instead of another influencer event, the way her family, Heather especially, treated him like an afterthought, a man who'd never measure up to their polished world. By the time he reached their apartment, the humiliation had hardened into something else: resolve. He wouldn't let this slide, not this time. That evening, Sophia swept into the apartment like a movie star, her emerald gown trailing behind her. What a day, she sighed, kicking off her heels. Madison was a vision, but Heather nearly lost it over the table settings. Jake sat on the couch, still in his suit, the tie loosened. He'd spent the afternoon replaying the morning, each memory sharpening his anger. "Sophia," he said, his voice steady. "Why wasn't I on the list?" She froze, her hand halfway to her earrings. "A wedding. Security wouldn't let me in. My name wasn't on the list." She waved a hand, already turning toward the mirror. "Oh, that. It was probably just a mix-up. You know how crazy today was." "A mix-up?" Jake stood, his voice rising. "I was humiliated, Sophia. People were filming me. It's already online." She sighed, checking her reflection. "Jake, don't make this a thing. It was Madison's day. She wanted it intimate." "Intimate?" He stepped closer, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I'm your husband. How is excluding me intimate?" Sophia's expression cooled, her lips tightening. "You're being dramatic. It's not like you were uninvited. Things just got complicated." "Complicated how?" he pressed. "You left early. You didn't answer my calls. You didn't even notice I wasn't there." She tossed her earrings onto the dresser, her movements sharp. "I was busy, Jake. Madison needed me. Heather needed me. I can't do everything." "But you could have done this," he said, his voice low. "You could have made sure I was included. You chose not to." Sophia turned, her eyes flashing. "You're making this about you. It's not. It's about family." "Family?" Jake's laugh was bitter. "Your family barely acknowledges me. And you? You let them?" She crossed her arms, her voice dripping with disdain. "If you felt so left out, why didn't you say something sooner?" "I have," he said, the words spilling out. "For years I've tried to fit into your world. I've ignored the snide comments, the exclusions, the way you prioritize everyone but me. But today was different." Sophia stared at him, her face unreadable. For a moment he thought she might apologize, might see the hurt she'd caused. Instead, she shrugged. "If you're done, I need to shower. It's been a long day." Jake watched her walk away, the click of the bathroom door echoing in the silence. He sank onto the couch, the weight of her dismissal crushing. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about a marriage that had been unraveling for years, and a man who'd been too loyal to admit it. Jake drove away from the Langston estate, the humiliation of the wedding gate burning in his chest. The Audi's engine hummed, but it couldn't drown out the memory of the guard's words, "You're not on the list," or the image of Sophia laughing with her mother, oblivious to his absence. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, and let the road stretch out before him. Manhattan was 2 hours away, but he wasn't ready to face the apartment or Sophia. Not yet. He pulled into a rest stop, the kind with flickering lights and a lone coffee machine. Sitting in his car, he scrolled through his phone, the wedding denial clip already spreading online. A tweet read, "When your wife's family says nope at the gate, wedding fail." Another, "This guy's face though, bet he's rethinking his vows." Each post twisted the knife deeper. Jake wasn't just a husband who'd been excluded, he was a punchline. He thought about calling his brother Matt, but stopped himself. Matt had warned him about Sophia years ago, her obsession with status, her family's coldness. Jake hadn't listened. He'd believed love could bridge the gap between his grounded world and her polished one. Now, staring at the glowing screen, he wondered how he'd been so blind. The drive home felt endless. By the time he reached their apartment, the anger had settled into a heavy resolve. He wouldn't let Sophia brush this off. Not this time. Sophia was already home when Jake walked in, sprawled on the couch in a silk robe, scrolling through her phone. The apartment smelled faintly of her jasmine perfume, a scent that once comforted him, but now felt like a mask. She didn't look up as he set his keys down. "You're back early," she said, her voice casual, as if he'd just run to the store. Jake stood in the doorway, still in his navy suit, the tie crumpled in his pocket. "Why wasn't I on the list, Sophia?" She sighed, setting her phone down with exaggerated patience. "We went over this. It was a mix-up. Madison wanted it intimate." "Intimate?" Jake's voice was sharp. "You didn't answer my calls. You didn't even check if I was there. And now it's all over the internet." She rolled her eyes. "It's just drama, Jake. People post stupid stuff all the time. It'll blow over." "It's not about the posts," he said, stepping closer. "It's about you. You let this happen. You chose to leave me out." Sophia stood, crossing her arms. You're blowing this out of proportion. I was busy. Madison needed me. Heather needed me. I can't be everywhere at once. You could have been my wife, he said, his voice breaking. You could have made sure I was included. Instead, I was a nobody at my own sister-in-law's wedding. Her expression hardened. If you felt so neglected, why didn't you speak up before? Oh, right, because you're always so understanding. The sarcasm stung. Jake thought of all the times he'd bitten his tongue, when Heather forgot to invite him to family dinners, when Sophia spent hours curating her Instagram instead of talking to him, when Madison treated him like hired help. He told himself it was temporary, that Sophia would see him eventually, but she hadn't. I'm done being understanding, he said quietly. This isn't just about today, it's about us, about how you've been shutting me out for years. Sophia's lips parted, but no words came. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes. Then she turned away, grabbing her phone. I'm tired, Jake. Let's talk tomorrow. She walked to the bedroom, leaving him standing in the dim living room. The silence was louder than any argument. Jake sank onto the couch, his mind racing. This wasn't just a marriage in trouble. It was a marriage built on lies he'd been too loyal to see. The next morning, Jake woke to the sound of Sophia's blender whirring in the kitchen. She was making her usual green smoothie, posting a time-lapse of the process to her 200,000 followers. He watched her from the hallway, the way she angled her phone to catch the light, the way she smiled for the camera but not for him. It was a performance, and he was no longer part of the script. He went to work, hoping the routine would ground him. As a project manager, Jake thrived on order, schedules, budgets, clear goals. But today, his office felt like a minefield. Colleagues avoided his eyes, their whispers trailing him to his desk. By noon, a coworker slid a phone across the table during lunch. You seen this, ma'am? It was a meme, Jake's face, frozen in shock at the wedding gate, captioned, "When you realize you're not VIP." The room erupted in awkward laughter. Jake forced a smile, but inside he was crumbling. He wasn't just Sophia's ignored husband, he was that guy, the one everyone pitied. Back home, Jake started noticing things he'd overlooked. Sophia's late nights with clients that never led to actual deals, the way she'd changed the subject when he asked about their savings, the way her family's events, always lavish, always exclusive, seemed to multiply. He opened his laptop, logging into their joint bank account for the first time in months. What he saw stopped him cold. Their savings, $40,000 0 cents he'd meticulously built for a down payment on a house, were gone. The balance was $3.22. Transactions showed transfers to accounts he didn't recognize, labeled vaguely Event Services, Consulting, Langston Enterprises. His heart pounded. Sophia had access to the account, but they'd agreed to discuss big withdrawals. She hadn't said a word. He was about to call her when his phone buzzed, an email from an unknown sender, Lila Carter, wedding planner. The subject line read, "Regarding Madison's wedding." Jake opened it, his pulse racing. Mr. Mitchell, I planned Madison Langston's wedding. I'm reaching out because I believe you deserve to know the truth. Your wife, Sophia, covered the $35,000, 0 cents balance for the event using funds from your joint account. She instructed me to bill her directly and not mention your name. I assumed you were aware, but recent events suggest otherwise. I'm happy to provide documentation if needed. Best, Lila Carter. Jake reread the email, each word a hammer to his chest. Sophia hadn't just excluded him from the wedding. She'd used his life's savings to fund it, without a hint of remorse. He thought of her casual dismissal last night, her insistence that it was just drama. This wasn't drama. This was betrayal. He called Sophia, his hands shaking. He picked up on the third ring, her voice bright. Hey, I'm in the middle of a shoot. Can this wait? No, it can't, Jake said, his voice low. I know about the money, Sophia, the $35,000 0 cents you took from our account for Madison's wedding. There was a pause, long enough to confirm her guilt. Jake, you're overreacting. It was a family emergency. Madison needed savings, he cut in. You used our savings without telling me. How is that okay? It's not like I stole it, she snapped. I was going to tell you. Things just got hectic. Hectic? His laugh was hollow. You lied to me. You let me stand there like an idiot while you spent my money to play the perfect sister. Our money, she corrected, her tone icy. We're married, Jake. What's mine is yours, right? Not when you hide it, he said. Not when you make decisions that exclude me. Not when you treat me like I don't matter. She sighed as if he were a child throwing a tantrum. Look, I'll pay it back. Can we not do this now? Jake hung up, his vision blurring with anger. He opened the email again, staring at Lila's offer of documentation. He replied, asking for every receipt, every contract. If Sophia thought she could dismiss this, she was wrong. That night, Jake slept on the couch, the apartment feeling more like a stranger's than his own. He dreamed of the early days with Sophia, coffee dates, late-night talks, the way she'd laugh at his terrible puns. But those memories felt distant, overshadowed by the truth. She'd chosen her family's image over their marriage. She'd chosen herself. In the morning, he checked his phone. The wedding clip had gone viral, shared by influencers and gossip blogs. A new post caught his eye, a screenshot of Sophia's Instagram, her latest caption, "Family first, always. Langston wedding." No mention of him. No hint of the chaos she'd caused. Jake closed the app, his resolve hardening. He couldn't stay in this marriage, not like this. But leaving wasn't enough. He needed answers. About the money, about Sophia's lies, about how deep this betrayal went. He opened his laptop, searching for Langston Enterprises. What he found was just the beginning: shell companies, vague websites, and whispers of financial trouble. Sophia's perfect world was a house of cards, and Jake was done holding it up. Jake woke to the buzz of his phone, notifications piling up like debris from a storm. The wedding denial clip had exploded overnight, racking up millions of views. It wasn't just a viral video anymore. It was a cultural moment. Memes flooded X, TikTok, and Instagram. Jake's stunned face photoshopped onto movie posters, captioned with quips like, "When you're not even VIP in your own marriage." A late-night talk show host had even cracked a joke about it, calling him the guy who got uninvited to his own life. Each ping on his phone was a reminder. He was a public joke. At work, the air was thick with pity. Jake's colleagues, usually focused on deadlines and client calls, now tiptoed around him. During a team meeting, someone's phone buzzed with a notification, a familiar clip of Jake arguing with the security guard. The room went silent, eyes darting to him. "Let's move on," Jake said, his voice tight, but the damage was done. He was no longer just the reliable project manager. He was that guy. He tried to focus on his spreadsheets, but his mind kept drifting to Sophia. Her dismissal of the $35,000, 0 cents she'd taken from their savings, her refusal to acknowledge his humiliation. The email from Lila Carter, the wedding planner, sat in his inbox, complete with receipts and contracts proving Sophia's secret payment. Jake hadn't confronted her again, not yet. He needed to be sure, to have every fact in hand before he faced her. But the weight of her betrayal was suffocating. By lunch, he couldn't take the office anymore. He stepped outside, the Manhattan air crisp with early fall. His phone buzzed again, not another meme but a text from his brother Matt. "You okay? Saw the video, call me." Jake ignored it. He wasn't ready to admit how far things had fallen. Instead, he opened X, searching for mentions of the wedding. What he found wasn't just mockery. A few users had started digging into the Langstons, questioning their lavish lifestyle. One post read, "How do you fund a Hamptons wedding when your business is a P.O. box? Langston scam." Another linked to a grainy photo of Heather Langston at a charity gala, captioned, "When your loans are bigger than your ego." Jake's pulse quickened. Was Sophia's perfect world starting to crack? That evening, Jake waited for Sophia in their apartment. She'd been out all day, posting cryptic Instagram stories about rising above the noise. When she finally walked in, her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, but her eyes were tired. She dropped her bag on the counter and sighed. "What a mess." Jake didn't move from the couch. "You mean the video? Or the fact that you stole $35,000, 0 cents from me?" Her head snapped up, her expression a mix of annoyance and defiance. "I didn't steal anything. It was our money, Jake. And it's just drama. People will forget about it." "It's not just drama," he said, standing. "It's our savings, our future. You used it to bankroll Madison's wedding." Sophia crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "You're acting like I committed a crime. It was a family thing. Madison deserved her day. And what do I deserve?" Jake's voice rose, raw with hurt. "To be humiliated, to be lied to find out from a stranger that my wife cleaned out our account?" She flinched, but only for a moment. "You're blowing this out of proportion. I was going to pay it back." What? He shot back. "Your influencer deals, your consulting gigs that never materialize? Or are you borrowing from your mom's shady accounts too?" Her eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I've been looking into Langston Enterprises," Jake said, his voice steady. "It's a shell, no real clients, no real revenue, just a front for whatever you and your family are hiding." Sophia's face paled, but she recovered quickly. "You're paranoid, and you're making this about my family when it's about you not handling a little bad press." "Bad press?" Jake laughed, bitter. "This isn't press, Sophia, it's my life, and you've made it clear I'm not part of yours." She stared at him, her lips tight. For a second he thought she might apologize, might show a crack in her polished armor. Instead, she grabbed her bag. "I'm not doing this right now. I have a meeting." She left, the door slamming behind her. Jake stood in the silence, his anger giving way to a hollow ache. He'd spent years trying to be enough for her family, her image, her world. And for what? The next morning, Jake's inbox was flooded. Lila Carter had sent the promised documentation, invoices, emails, even a contract signed by Sophia. Every detail confirmed it. Sophia had authorized the $35,000, 0 cents payment, explicitly instructing Lila to keep Jake's name out of it. He printed the files, stacking them neatly on the coffee table. Evidence of her betrayal laid bare. But the Langstons' troubles were growing louder. Jake opened his laptop to find a new article from a gossip columnist, the Hamptons Herald. The Langston Illusion, a family built on loans and lies. The piece was brutal, detailing Heather's reliance on high-interest loans to fund her lifestyle, Madison's sponsored wedding that was anything but, and Sophia's inflated online persona. The columnist cited anonymous sources, vendors, former employees, who claimed the Langstons had dodged payments and faked partnerships for years. Jake read the article twice, his mind racing. The comments section was a feeding frenzy. No wonder they snubbed the husband. Gotta keep the scam tight. Sophia's whole vibe is a lie. Fake it till you make it. He should have felt vindicated, but all he felt was exhaustion. This wasn't just about him anymore. The Langstons were imploding, and Sophia was caught in the wreckage. At work, the mood had shifted. Colleagues no longer whispered about the video. They asked if he'd seen the Herald piece. One coworker, a junior analyst named Priya, slid her chair over. "You okay, Jake?" "This Langston stuff is wild." "I'm fine," he lied, but her concern was a small comfort. For the first time in days, someone saw him as more than a meme. That evening, Sophia called. Jake almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Her voice was shaky, a stark contrast to her usual confidence. "Jake, we need to talk. In person." He agreed, against his better judgment. When she arrived at the apartment, she looked different, less polished, her eyes red. She sat on the couch, clutching her phone. "It's bad," she said. "The article. It's everywhere. Vendors are calling, sponsors are pulling out, mom's freaking out, and Madison's getting sued by the florist." Jake leaned against the counter, arms crossed. And I need your help," she said, her voice small. "You're good at PR. You know how to handle a crisis. We can spin this, make it go away." He stared at her, incredulous. "You want me to fix your mess, after you excluded me, lied to me, used our money?" "I know I screwed up," she said, tears welling. "But this is bigger than us. It's my family. If we don't act fast, we're done." Jake's jaw tightened. He thought of the wedding, the guard's dismissal, the viral clip. He thought of the $35,000, 0 cents. The years of being sidelined, the way she'd dismissed his pain. "You didn't care about me when it was my crisis," he said, his voice cold. "Don't expect me to fix yours now." Sophia's tears spilled over, but Jake saw through them. This wasn't remorse, it was desperation. She wasn't sorry for hurting him. She was sorry her world was collapsing. "Jake, please," she said. "I'll make it right, just help us." He shook his head. "You made your choices, Sophia. Live with them." She stood, her face hardening. "You're really going to let my family fall apart?" "Your family fell apart long before me," he said. "I was just too blind to see it." She left without another word, the door clicking shut. Jake sat on the couch, the stack of Lila's documents staring back at him. He didn't feel triumph, only a quiet clarity. The Langstons' collapse wasn't his fault, but it wasn't his burden either. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of their world lifting. The next day, Jake called a lawyer. Not to sue, though part of him wanted to, but to understand his options. The joint account, the apartment lease, the life he'd built with Sophia. It all needed untangling. The lawyer, a calm woman named Ellen, listened to his story and nodded. "You've got a strong case for financial misconduct," she said. "But more than that, you've got a chance to start over." Start over. The words lingered as Jake walked home. The viral clip still circulated, but its sting was fading. The Herald article had shifted the narrative. People weren't laughing at him anymore. They were questioning the Langstons. Jake wasn't that guy. He was the one who'd survived them. That night, he packed a bag. Not everything, just enough for a week. He'd find a hotel, maybe crash with Matt. The apartment, with its jasmine scent and Sophia's curated decor, felt like a museum of a life he no longer recognized. He left a note on the counter. "I'm done. We'll talk through lawyers. Short, final, true." As he stepped into the elevator, his phone buzzed. Another X post. This one a screenshot of Sophia's latest Instagram story. A black square with the words, "Taking time to heal." No mention of him, no apology, just another performance. Jake deleted the app. The Langstons could crumble. Sophia could spin her stories. He was done playing their game. Jake stepped out of the elevator, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder, and left the apartment behind. The Manhattan street was alive with honking cabs and hurried pedestrians, but for the first time in years he felt unburdened. Sophia's world, her lies, her family's facade, her relentless need for perfection was no longer his to carry. He'd left the note on the counter, simple and final. "I'm done. We'll talk through lawyers." Now, he just needed a place to land. He booked a hotel room for the night, a no-frills spot in Brooklyn, with creaky floors and a view of a brick wall. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his. Sitting on the stiff mattress, he called his brother Matt. "I left her," Jake said, the words heavy but true. Matt didn't hesitate. "Good, you deserve better. Crash with me if you need to." Jake thanked him but declined. He needed space, not just from Sophia but from everyone. The viral wedding clip, the Hamptons Herald expose, the $35,000, 0-cent betrayal. They'd stripped him raw, but they'd also shown him the truth. He wasn't Sophia's accessory or the Langstons' punching bag. He was enough, and it was time to prove it to himself. The next morning, Jake found a modest apartment in Brooklyn, a one-bedroom with scuffed hardwood and a leaky faucet. It was a far cry from the polished Manhattan loft he'd shared with Sophia, but it felt honest. It signed the lease, paid the deposit with what little he had left in his personal account, and moved in with a single box of clothes and books. The emptiness was daunting, but it was also a canvas. This was his life now, and he'd build it on his terms. Jake threw himself into rebuilding. Work became his anchor. His colleagues, once awkward about the viral clip, now respected his focus. Priya, the junior analyst, started joining him for coffee runs, her easy humor a reminder that not everyone saw him as a meme. He took on new projects, pitching ideas he'd shelved to avoid Sophia's mockery. His boss noticed, giving him a lead role on a high-profile campaign. For the first time in years, Jake felt seen for his work, not his marriage. Outside the office, he redissembled pieces of himself he'd buried. He started jogging along the Brooklyn waterfront, the rhythm of his sneakers on pavement clearing his mind. He dug out old novels from a used bookstore, Vonnegut, Morrison, books Sophia had called pretentious. Reading became his evening ritual, a quiet rebellion against her world of filters and likes. On weekends, he took the train to upstate trails, hiking paths that reminded him of his college days, when life felt full of possibility. Photography, a hobby Sophia had dismissed as amateur, became his refuge. He bought a second-hand Canon, nothing fancy, and started shooting. Graffiti-covered walls, street vendors, the way sunlight hit the East River. The camera forced him to notice details, to find beauty in the ordinary. It was the opposite of Sophia's curated aesthetic, and it felt like freedom. One Saturday at a local art fair, Jake lingered at a booth displaying black and white photos of Brooklyn's fading storefronts. The photographer, a woman in her 30s with short dark hair and a warm smile, caught him studying her work. "You a shooter?" she asked, nodding at the camera slung around his neck. "Trying to be," Jake said, a little sheepish, "just getting back into it." She extended a hand. "Clara Rivera, I teach a photography workshop at the community center. You should come by." Jake hesitated. He wasn't one for groups, not after the public humiliation, but Clara's grounded energy, free of pretense, drew him in. "Maybe I will," he said. They talked for an hour, about lenses, film versus digital, the way a good shot could tell a story. Clara's passion was infectious, rooted in authenticity rather than applause. She didn't ask about his past, and he didn't volunteer it. For the first time in months, Jake felt like himself, not Sophia's discarded husband. Jake started attending Clara's workshop, a small group that met twice a week in a cramped room with flickering lights. The other students, retirees, college kids, a single mom, shared a quiet dedication to their craft. Clara taught them to see the world differently, to capture moments that mattered. Jake's photos improved, but more than that, he found a community. Over coffee after class, he and Clara swapped stories. She'd grown up in Queens, worked as a freelance photographer, and valued honesty over flash. "Life's too short for fake," she said once, and Jake felt the words settle deep. Their friendship grew slowly, built on shared walks through the city, trading tips on light and shadow. Clara never pushed, never pried. When Jake finally told her about Sophia, not the viral clip, just the marriage, she listened without judgment. "Sounds like you carried a lot for her," she said. "What do you want to carry for yourself now?" The question stayed with him. He wanted peace, purpose, a life that felt true. Clara wasn't a replacement for Sophia. She was a mirror, reflecting the man he was becoming. They started meeting outside class, grabbing tacos, exploring flea markets, shooting photos at dawn. It wasn't romance, not yet, but it was something real. One evening, Jake's phone rang. Sophia's name flashed on the screen, the first contact since he'd left. He almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice flat. "Jake, I need to talk," she said, her tone softer than he remembered. "Can we meet?" Against his better judgment, he agreed. They met at a quiet cafe in Brooklyn, far from her Manhattan haunts. Sophia looked different, less polished, her hair in a loose bun, no makeup. She stirred her coffee, avoiding his eyes. "I've been thinking a lot," she said. "About us. About what I did." Jake waited, his expression guarded. He'd spent weeks untangling her betrayal, the money, the exclusion, the years of being sidelined. He wasn't here to forgive her. "I was wrong," she continued, her voice trembling. "I got caught up in Mom's world, in Madison's drama. I didn't see you. I'm sorry." He studied her, searching for sincerity, but her eyes flicked to her phone, a reflex she couldn't hide. The Herald expose had gutted the Langstons, Heather faced lawsuits, Madison's influencer deals had dried up, and Sophia's follower count was tanking. This wasn't about him. It was about her fear of losing everything. "You're sorry because it's falling apart," Jake said, his voice steady. "Not because you hurt me." "That's not true," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "I miss you, Jake. We could try again." He shook his head. "You didn't miss me when I was standing right in front of you. You missed the idea of me, someone to prop up your life. I'm done with that." Sophia's eyes welled up, but Jake felt no urge to comfort her. He'd spent years chasing her approval, only to realize it was a mirage. "I hope you figure it out," he said, standing. "But I'm not your fix." He walked away, the cafe door chiming behind him. The night air was cool, the Brooklyn streets alive with possibility. For the first time, he felt truly free. Back at his apartment, Jake sorted through his photos, picking shots for Clara's upcoming exhibit. His life was small but full. Work he cared about, friends who saw him, a hobby that lit him up. He wasn't the man who'd stood at the Langston estate, desperate to belong. He was someone new, someone whole. The next day, he met Clara at the waterfront, cameras in hand. She grinned, pointing at a flock of gulls against the sunset. "Perfect light. You in?" "Always," Jake said, raising his lens. As they shot, he realized this was what he'd been searching for. Not just a moment, but a life built on respect, joy, and truth. Sophia's world was a fading echo. His was just beginning. Jake's Brooklyn apartment was small, but it was his sanctuary. The walls, once bare, now held a few of his photographs, black and white shots of the city's quiet corners, framed simply. His Canon sat on a shelf beside a stack of novels, a testament to the life he'd rebuilt in the months since leaving Sophia. The viral wedding clip had faded from the internet's fickle memory, and the Langston scandal had become old news. Jake, too, had moved on, carving out a world that felt authentic, grounded in respect and purpose. Work was thriving. His latest project, a rebranding campaign for a local nonprofit, had earned him a promotion to senior project manager. His colleagues no longer saw him as the guy from the meme. They valued his steady leadership and quiet creativity. Priya, his coworker, had become a close friend, joining him for trivia nights at a nearby bar. His brother Matt visited often, their bond stronger now that Jake was no longer under Sophia's shadow. Photography remained his passion. Clara's workshop had evolved into a tight-knit community, and Jake's photos were gaining notice. At Clara's urging, he'd submitted a series to a local gallery, and to his surprise, they'd been accepted for a group show. The exhibit was a week away, and Jake felt a mix of nerves and pride. This wasn't about fame, it was about claiming a piece of himself Sophia had once mocked. Clara had become a constant in his life. Their friendship, built on shared walks and honest conversations, had deepened into something more. They hadn't labeled it, but the way she laughed at his dry humor, the way she challenged him to see the world through his lens, felt like the kind of love he'd always wanted, one that honored him, not diminished him. For the first time, Jake wasn't chasing someone else's approval. He was enough. One crisp October afternoon, Jake's phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Can we talk? I'm in Brooklyn. Please." He stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the screen. Months had passed since their last meeting at the cafe, where her tears had felt more like strategy than sorrow. He'd heard through Matt that the Langstons were still reeling. Heather's loans were in default, Madison had fled to Miami to dodge creditors, and Sophia's influencer career was on life support. Part of him wanted to ignore her, but another part needed closure, a final nail in the coffin of their past. He agreed to meet at a park near his apartment, a quiet spot with benches and a view of the river. Sophia arrived, looking unlike herself. No designer clothes, no curated makeup. She wore a plain sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back. She looked smaller, less like the glamorous figure who'd once dominated his world. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sitting on a bench. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." Jake leaned against a tree, arms crossed. "What do you want, Sophia?" She took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the ground. "I owe you an apology, a real one. I was awful to you, excluding you, using the money, letting my family treat you like you didn't matter. I was so caught up in their world, in being someone, that I lost sight of us." Jake listened, his expression neutral. Her words were the ones he'd once longed to hear, but they felt hollow now, like a script delivered too late. "Why now?" he asked. "Because your followers are gone? Because your mom's empire is crumbling?" She flinched, but didn't deny it. "It's not just that. Losing everything? It made me see what I threw away. You were good to me, Jake, better than I deserved. I'm trying to be better now." He studied her, searching for the woman he'd loved, the one who'd laughed with him over late-night pizza, who'd promised forever. But that woman was gone, if she'd ever existed. What he saw now was someone grasping for stability, not redemption. "I'm glad you're trying," he said, his voice steady. "But this isn't something words can fix. You made choices. So did I." Sophia's eyes welled up. "Do you hate me?" "No," he said, surprised by his own honesty. "I don't hate you. I just don't need you anymore." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I hope you're happy, Jake. Really." He didn't respond. As she walked away, her silhouette fading into the park's golden light, Jake felt a weight lift. This wasn't about vengeance or forgiveness. It was about letting go. Sophia was his past. His future was his own. The gallery exhibit was a quiet triumph. Jake's photos hung alongside Clara's and others from the workshop, drawing a small but appreciative crowd. Priya and Matt showed up, cheering him on like he'd won an Oscar. Clara stood beside him, her presence a steady warmth. "You did this," she said, nudging his shoulder. "Own it." Jake smiled, something he did more easily now. "Couldn't have without you." After the show, they grabbed burgers at a diner, splitting fries and debating the best focal lengths. Clara's laugh, unguarded and real, was a sound Jake wanted in his life for a long time. Over coffee, she pulled out her phone, showing him a website for Colorado's national parks. "Rocky Mountain's got insane trails," she said. "We could shoot there, sunrise over the peaks, maybe some wildlife. You in?" Jake leaned back, picturing it. The open sky, the rugged trails, Clara's camera clicking beside his. It wasn't just a trip. It was a beginning. "I'm in," he said, his voice certain. They spent the next week planning, booking a cabin and mapping routes. Jake felt a spark he hadn't known in years, not since the early days with Sophia, before her world consumed them. But this was different. Clara didn't need him to be anything but himself. Their connection, built on mutual respect and shared passions, was the kind of love the outline had promised one. The only one before her life among the stars had promised one that listened, honored, included. Jake's new life took shape with quiet momentum. Work kept him busy, his promotion bringing new challenges and respect. He ran most mornings, the Brooklyn waterfront his constant companion. Photography grew from a hobby to a side hustle, with local businesses commissioning his shots for their websites. The gallery had asked for more of his work, and Clara was pushing him to start a portfolio site. "You've got something," she said. "Don't hide it." He didn't. For the first time, Jake embraced his worth, not as someone's husband or scapegoat, but as a man who'd rebuilt himself from the ground up. The Langstons were a distant memory, their drama irrelevant. Sophia hadn't contacted him again, and he didn't care. His boundaries, once porous, were now firm. One evening, as he and Clara packed camera gear for Colorado, Jake paused, looking at her across the cluttered table. "You know," he said, "I used to think redemption meant fixing things with someone else. Now I think it's about fixing yourself." Clara smiled, her eyes warm. "You're doing a hell of a job, Mitchell." He laughed, the sound light and free. The trip to Colorado was days away, a chance to capture new landscapes, to write a new chapter. Jake didn't need Sophia's approval or the Langstons' validation. He had his work, his friends, his art, and a woman who saw him for who he was. His life was simpler, smaller, but infinitely richer. As he zipped his camera bag, Jake glanced at a photo on the wall, a shot of the East River at dawn, the water catching the first light. It was a moment he'd captured alone, months ago when he was still finding his way. Now, it felt like a promise. Every sunrise was a chance to begin again.